Good morning. I didn't realize we were running a little late. I feel like I'm in Terminator when you do that. So this morning we're going to start out, we're going to have a little fun, but I need some volunteers to help me with this. So, as you can see, I have a beautiful sleeping mask, untouched. Nobody's ever wore it. Then I have all these mouse traps. So I need perhaps a married couple that really trust each other a lot. Who feels like they're really in tune? I feel drawn to this area here. Wait a minute. I'm hearing an S, and I'm hearing a K. Does that mean anything to you guys back there? You willing to? You guys willing to try this? Okay. Kevin and Sandra Whitman. All right. So, the title of the sermon is "Live by Faith, Not by Sight." Are you putting this together yet? So, who gets the blindfold? Is the first question. The other person can't touch them, but they have to lead them across the stage by voice only, without letting them step in these loaded mouse traps that we're going to set up. Perfect. Do you want me to use blindfold? Because to be honest with you, if you want to do the blindfold, because if it was him, as soon as he got up here, I'd tell him to take his shoes off. We got to make it like it's going to hurt if he messes up. So you guys decide. Okay. So, blindfold. Somebody go with her in the back, and then you're going to bring her back in. Judy, can you do that? Help it, make sure it fits and all that, but just take her in the back room there. We need about 3 minutes. Bethany, come on up. You're going to help set traps with me. And I need a few another help. You want to come up and help me? No, somebody's got to come up here and help me. John, come on up. Somebody, you're not going to get hit. We're just going to set them. Sean, will you help me? Tempe, somebody come up here and help me out.
Take a towel off.
So make sure they're loaded. Just put them on. Make sure he gets up. Yeah. He's just got to get.
Oh, heck of a lot of traps.
Oh, be careful. Thanks for coming up. I do have, before we do this, I have Sam Callie, a marriage counselor. I got his number for you. And I've paid for the first 3 sessions. You're ready to, just in case this doesn't go as I was thinking. Judy, I think we're ready.
Now, just so I understand, she's supposed to listen to me?
Yeah, that's already going to be tough.
You're the first time for everything. So.
Yeah, you got to get her from there to here without losing a toe. You want to retrieve your mom? Oh, there she comes. All right. Give Sandra a round of applause for playing along. Hey, after the service, there's going to be a sale on mousetraps. Just come see me. And we're going to be quiet because she's got to listen to Kevin. You can get her up onto the platform. That's a good start. Just so you know, they are live.
Out. One more.
Oh, let me grab that one.
One more.
They're just like, man, we're just trying to come to church. Here's sermon. Get out before noon would be good. I get it. No, that's awesome. Thanks for playing along. So today's message is just that. Live by faith, not by sight. And I can tell you in our lives sometimes with God, it feels like that. But that's why the Bible tells us we need to know the voice of our shepherd. And that analogy, we need to be able to recognize. Now, if I was really mean, and I used to do this with team building, we used to really set them, but I let them keep their shoes on. But I would have other people come up and shout out other commands to demonstrate just how hard this can be. Other people are, right, no, right, and she has to tune everything out and just listen to her husband. But that's life sometimes, and that's our spiritual lives sometimes. We have to be able to recognize the voice of God and know what he's telling us to do, because a lot of times life feels like you're walking around barefoot in a bunch of mousetraps and not fun. Well, the scriptures tell us in 2 Corinthians 5:7, it's right there. For we live by faith and not by sight. Sight's a lot easier, right? We would like it that way, but it's not the way it is. We have to live by faith. And so there's a great famous story in the Bible we're going to use to frame this and put this into context for us today, and that's the story of David and Goliath. Most of us are familiar with it, but if not, you'll find out a little bit more about it as we go. But Goliath was this just behemoth of a man. What do they say, around 9 foot, or is it even more? It's around 9, I think. Big dude, right? And he is a Philistine who's an enemy of the children of God, the Israelites. And he's taunting these guys. He's making fun of them. He's daring them to send out their best warrior to go one-on-one combat. Winner take all kind of stuff. Well, in your life, you face Goliaths too. Giants that seem impossible when you look at it. Right? If we were all placing bets on David and Goliath and we didn't know anything, I'm pretty sure almost everybody would put their money on Goliath, right? It seems like a no-brainer. It would not be like you would just be like, of course, look at him. He's huge. There's insurmountable. No way you can win. And so in our life, we got things in front of us that feel insurmountable. So my question for you is what is your Goliath? Sometimes it can be an addiction, be it drugs or alcohol. It can be food, smoking, gossip, lying. People are addicted to those things too, trust me. Right? We all have vices and things that we struggle with. And sometimes they feel like a Goliath and feel like impossible to break through. It might be a bad habit that you just can't kick. For sure. Who's back there, Brandon? You got to catch up with me, bud. Put the phone down. And so it could be a bad habit. It could be an attitude that you're struggling with. You just can't shake out of a bad attitude. It could be you got laid off from your job. It could be financial problems. It could be marital problems. It could be a sickness that you're dealing with. Any one of those can feel like a Goliath in your life. Overwhelming. And you can't just get through it. Well, there's two ways at looking at the Goliaths in our lives. Two different ways. One, we can look at with the eyes of the faithless, which produces fear, for sure. I'm a couple ahead, Brandon. You really got to wake up back there. Okay, I don't care about the live stream. Let's get this going in here. It'll be a little easier and less distracting. So the first is the eyes of the faithless, which results in dominance by the enemy. When you are dominated by fear, when fear is taken over you, he's already won. He's won mentally. He's got you, and he's holding on to you, and it's almost impossible to overcome it. And that's exactly what was going on with the Israelites. The Bible tells us in the story that Goliath came out day after day after day and taunted the Israelites, saying, come on, where's the best among you? Is there not a warrior who would stand up and come and fight me? And he does this day after day. He was the ultimate trash talker in the Old Testament, for sure. But when we don't have any faith, we're intimidated. We're scared. 1 Samuel 17, when the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. Now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his father from family and from taxes in Israel. Man, wouldn't you like to be exempt from taxes? That's quite enticing. They even had those problems back then, for sure. Verse 25, the word defy, when we look at it in the Hebrew, actually means to taunt, ridicule, and humiliate. And that's exactly what the enemy wants from us. He wants us to cower from him so that he can mock us. You see, when we live by sight, we're defeated before the battle even begins. There wasn't even a battle that happened yet. They just were looking, and by sight, they were absolutely overwhelmed. Absolutely overwhelmed by him. They were mentally defeated when we live by sight. But when we live by faith, it's a different story. The Israelites fled from Goliath before the battle began. They saw the physical makeup of Goliath and ran, terrified of what they saw. The second way of approaching a Goliath in your life is the eyes of the faithful. And that creates and needs courage, which results in dominance over the enemy. See, when you choose to have faith, despite of what's in front of you, despite of what you're seeing, it takes courage to do that. Because so often we react to what we see, and we don't have the ability or the discipline of having faith, but we need to develop it. Faith is a lot like a muscle. You got to exercise it. You got to use it. You got to remember the gains you've made to stay encouraged to go forward. The Israelites fled Goliath before the battle began. 1 Samuel 17:26 says this, David's attitude towards the Israelite soldiers who fled, he was mad at them. David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for this man who kills this Philistine and remove his disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? I don't know why he had to work an ad hominem attack in there, but he did. The eyes of the faithful have a different view. David sees it not as the armies of Israel being run down, but actually bigger than that. The armies of the living God. He saw it as God's reputation at stake, not his own. He took it up a huge notch. For David, to allow Goliath to win is like telling God that he's not big enough to handle our problems. How many of you have already given up by sight to the problems in your life? Letting God know he's not big enough from your perspective, God's not big enough to handle your problems. How many of you have already done that? How many of you have already waved a white flag and said, forget it, this will never change, nothing's ever going to be different, I'm not going to even bother trying, I'm just going to surrender? Are you selling God short? It's a fair challenge to all of us, for sure. Well, I'm going to give you 4 steps to defeat the Goliath in your life. First, you have to ignore the doubts expressed by the faithless around you. All right? You're going to have friends and family and people around you who are going to just speak doubt at you. What are you wasting your time for? It's never going to change. I don't know why you bother with that. Nothing good's ever going to come out of it. It's already a done deal. You might as well forget it. You got no hope. It's not going to happen. You want to kind of stay away from people who speak like that to you because they're just trying to drag you down with them. Misery loves company. And they're all happy to share the misery with everybody around and drag you down. Verse 17, Saul replies, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth. So David, what happens is he goes before Saul, who was the king at the time. They bring him, and David, basically a young little man, is like, I'll fight him. And can you imagine all the other soldiers who are kind of like ducking away, don't look at me, and you're going to leave it up to this kid? Before he did this, he literally was a cheese boy. If you read the scriptures, that's what it said he did. He ran and got cheese for his brothers and ran them to the front lines. Apparently, that was the request back then. If we get more cheese, we can keep fighting. Okay. But no, seriously. He was running and getting supplies, cheese, it does say in the Bible, and bringing them to the front lines. He was a cheese boy. And Saul, the king's looking at him and going, are you kidding me? Out of all these great guys, the cheese boy steps up? And he's the one who's going to do this? And he looks at him, and he immediately speaks doubt to him. You are too small. You can't do this. You do not have what it takes. Which, to any man, any person, those are devastating words. You don't have what it takes to do this. Wow. 2, remember what God has done in the past. I call them God stories. It's so important not to forget when you've had answered prayer, when you've had situations where God has intervened and you know God has blessed or he's helped you through things. We're too quick to forget that stuff. It's so important to remind yourself of those things in the past. That's what David does. 1 Samuel 17, but David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off the sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. How many of you could add that to your resume? And even this young man recognized, even back then, that it wasn't just him, that it was God who allowed him to do that. God gave him the power. God gave him the victory over the lion and the bear. And here David's calling on that God story in his life. I remember when God took care of me when I had to go after the bear, when I had to go after the lion, and God delivered me, and it worked out. I didn't forget that. And God did it in the past. I know he'll do it again in the future. That's faith building. Number 3. Oh, here it is. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair and struck it and killed it. He's talking about the lion and the bear. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Wow. What a promise. The same God who answered prayers before, who parted the sea, who stopped the sun from setting, who raised the dead, who provided a ram caught in a thicket, who has done all these things, well, he's still God. Number 3, forsake natural means which have not been proven to be of value. So what do I mean by that? So often we try to solve the problems in our own way, with our own means, with what we have at our disposal. We try to solve problems. Instead of going to God, we try to take care of ourselves. I've done that a million times. Just try to take care of myself and not even include God into the fix, into the help that I needed. So Saul, this pretty big man himself, by the way, he acquiesces and is going to let David go fight. If I could go back in time, I'd probably really have a talking to Saul. You're going to let this kid do this and you're not going to step up? That would really drive me crazy. But that's a different story. So what does he do? He takes his armor, his shield, his sword, his helmet, his chainmail, all the stuff he would have, and he puts it on David. And David's just like, I can't move. Like, how am I I can't even pick this sword up. This is not my stuff. And that's the natural means. Saul just looked like, well, this is what you're going to need to fight if you're going to make it. And I love this about David. He basically just says, take this stuff off me. This is not me. This is not what I do. What was David really good at? Slingshot. Now, not like the kind you're thinking about. It would be a sling that they would whip around. But that was his weapon. He was a shepherd. That's what he knew. You know what that was? What that represents in your life? Your gifting. God gives everybody something, usually more than one thing. And he gives us gifts. He gives us things that we become really good at, right? And we're blessed with. David was blessed with a sling for the purposes of taking care of his flock. And he was really good at it. And he thought to himself, I'm going to go with the gift God gave me. Some of you need to realize that. You do have what it takes, and you've already been given what you need. Part of the problem is you got to wake up to it. You got to realize it, grasp it, and go for it. Half the problem is the fear. We got to overcome that fear. God has not left you abandoned. He's not left you empty-handed. He hasn't. You have what it takes. I promise you. You don't need something else to step in and take care of the problem for you. You need God and you. That's it. So he doesn't need Saul's stuff. He goes out there with his slingshot, which is crazy, but that's what he knows. And he does the fourth thing we need to do. We must act boldly in the face of intimidating circumstances. We must act boldly in the face of intimidating circumstances. Verse 45, David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Almighty, or the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. 46, this day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcass of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there's a God in Israel. Goliath thought he was a good smack talker. Right? David talked trash right back to him. Oh, yeah? He talks trash right back to him. I love it. Right? And so David, what he did is he took action. He believed all things that he had seen. He prayed. He went to God, not himself. He remembered God's stories. He remembered the things that God did for him in the past, and then he acted in the face of intimidation. Some of you need to do the same. You're facing insurmountable things. You're facing Goliaths in your life. We all do. But I'm here to tell you, you got what it takes. God's on your side. What's missing? Are you walking by sight or are you walking by faith? Because there's no way around it. God does allow us 100% to be in situations where it requires faith. I didn't say he creates bad stuff in people's lives, I'm saying. But you will find yourself over and over again in situations where it requires faith. If God wasn't so serious about faith, he'd just show up. Hang out with us. You wouldn't have to. You'd be like Thomas. Okay, I see the holes. I'm good. But there's something about it. He wants us to trust him as his heavenly Father. He wants that. He wants us to trust. And that takes this thing inside of us that these things can't help with. And that's faith. And I'll tell you, a big key is looking at the past and seeing where God's done things and helped you out. And pushing that forward in your life and saying, I've seen him do it in the past. I know he'll do it again. I know he'll do it again. I know he'll help us. I know it, and I believe it. I've faced all kinds of things personally and with the church and the community center. And anytime we've gotten to a tough pickle, a real hard time, after I try on Saul's armor, you hear me? I don't get it right every time. It's usually after I put on the armor, grab a big sword, and get ready for a big fight, because I want to fight, because I'm mad, and I want to go after what I perceive to be injustice or something that's out of my control. I've done that so many times. I put on the armor, and then God always gently reminds me, take it off, you knucklehead. Take it off. Stop it. You don't need that. You don't need that. I've got everything you need. You know what you need to do. Let's have faith, pull back on what we've done in the past, and have faith that I'll do it again. I'll be there for you, and I'll walk you through this. And I've seen that happen time and time and time again, where we've been in what looks like an impossible situation where I either want to act like David's brothers and the soldiers, and I just want to leave and go and say, I'm done with this. I'm not doing it anymore. It's not worth it. Or I want to put on the armor, right? What's that sound like? Fight or flight? Anybody recognizing that? Right? I want to take off and run away from it all and not deal with it. Or I want to fight right? I want to put the armor on. I want to go attack it and take it out. Most of the time, I have the fight response. Just ask the girls when they scare me. I'm afraid one of these days I'm going to cold cock one of them. That's not going to be good. They love to jump scare me. And my instinct every time, I'm almost always like, what's going on, you know? Unless there's a bat. If you don't know that whole story or seen that, just ask me. But apparently when bats show up, all the fight in me leaves. I try to pick up a recliner and protect myself. I was so scared of that bat. Bailey's screams did not help, by the way. It was terrifying. But think about your own life, right? We do those things. That's fight or flight. And God's actually offering a third option that we forget to take advantage of, and that's to have faith. We can fight, we can flight, or we can have faith. So I fight for the faith one. It doesn't always come quick. It's not always my first thought. But usually I end up there, thank God, before I do something dumb. I end up there going, all right, God, I'll give it to you. And I've got good reason to have faith because of how much he's done for me in the past. You know, how many times I've seen him, and it doesn't even have to be me. When I've seen God work in other people's lives, show up, do things, that gives me faith too. That encourages me as well. And so keep that in mind for sure, and be encouraged by that. It's time to take faith action over Goliath. And I apologize for the last slide, but I had to. That's the end of the story right there. Not only did David have some trash talk for him, but God backed it up. And David didn't have a sword, by the way. He had a sling. You know whose sword that was? Yeah, it was Goliath's sword. That was Goliath's sword. You can overcome what's going on in your life. You can absolutely overcome a Goliath in your life if, instead of fight or flight, you go to faith. Let me pray for you. Father, we need help to take that option, to go the faith route. We need help for that because in the natural, we want to fight or we want to flight. But as we come alive to you and we recognize you in our lives and that you're active and you care and you intervene in our lives, a third option opens up that's better than the other two options. And that's the option of faith. Father, I pray for everyone here today. I pray for everyone here today, Lord, that you would increase their faith. You said in your word that it only takes a mustard seed. You don't need a whole lot to work with, God, just a little. And then you can do big things from that. I pray that our faith would be strengthened and pulled up. Lord, help us with that. Help us, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Hey, have a great week. Brandon, I am sorry. My OCD, which I know you relate to.